The European Union makes deal to curb global warming gases. European Union negotiators have said they have secured the world's broadest agreement to battle climate change after paying East European nations to accept changes that will punish their heavily polluting power sectors and industries and ramp up electricity prices. The historic deal to cut carbon dioxide by a fifth by 2020 was secured despite an economic crisis, a worldwide economic crisis, by allowing a myriad of exceptions for industry, sparking widespread criticism from environmental groups. This is a flagship EU policy with no captain, a mutinous crew, and several gaping holes in it, said a representative of the Environment Pressure Group, WWF. The plan increases the amount of emissions Europeans may offset by sponsoring green projects in developing countries. And with that opt-out, the WWF said Europe's actual emissions reductions would be a mere 4% and not the 20% the European Union claims. But the French president has rejected that view, saying, "This is quite historic. You will not find another continent in this world that has given itself such binding rules as we have just adopted," he said. The heart of the EU agreement is a system, theoretically starting in 2013, of auctioning industrial emission permits that are now issued free of charge. Major polluters will eventually pay $66.1 billion a year for this permission to pollute, and governments will use that income for clean energy development. But critics say loopholes allow some industries, especially in Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and other countries, to get largely off the hook with no incentive whatsoever to embrace green technologies. A carbon trading expert for the New York-based Environmental Defense Fund has calculated Europe would meet half its 20% goal by cutting emissions, and supposedly half by buying credits. That's not bad, he said. It's expensive to do everything domestically. The talks in Brussels paralleled global negotiations in Poznan, Poland, to set a work schedule for a treaty to replace the Kyoto Protocol by December 2009. Al Gore urged delegates at the global talks to not slow down over the next year. This is very important. We could not negotiate with the facts. We could not negotiate with the truth about our situation. We could not negotiate with the consequences of unrestrained dumping of 70 million tons of global warming pollution into the thin shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet every 24 hours. The Nobel Peace Prize winner and former U.S. Vice President said. Negotiators freed up millions of dollars to help poor countries adapt to increasingly severe droughts and severe weather, floods, and other effects of global warming. And of course, nobody really understands the climate or global warming that well. It's not that precise of a science. And there is a possibility that, well, the Earth is a living being in some kind of way, and it's getting sick. And also, global warming could tip the Earth into a new ice age, or put it back into a new ice age, and which would be worse, of course. It's hard to say. But environmentalists have complained that Poznan was hamstrung by delays and low ambitions. the conference could have been much more robust or meaningful, said a member of the Environmental Defense Fund. Low expectations. Organizers insisted that the goal was not to draft a replacement for Kyoto, which expires in 2012, but only to work out what would need to be done by December 2009 to draft a new treaty. The funding decision in the final hours of the two-week conference could begin to release approximately $60 million within months. They're going to need a whole lot more than that. It's been estimated that the nations of the world will need at least 45 to 50 trillion dollars just to begin to start cleaning up the atmosphere, or to start taking care of global warming, or whatever have you call it. Until now, the UN-backed Adaptation Fund Board could not operate because its board had no right to approve and sign contracts. Ministers and senior delegates from dozens of countries decided to give a blocked funds governing board the authority to directly disperse money to developing countries to finance projects ranging from seawalls and improved water systems to training in new agricultural techniques. In other words, how to spend the $60 million. Well, that's not really a lot if you spread it around the world, is it? No, they're going to need at least 45 to 50 trillion dollars to take care of this problem. And where is America or China or any of the other big developed countries in this plan? It's going to take more than just the EU. Ministers and top officials from 145 countries concluded in a roundtable discussion that the negotiations over the next year should produce an ambitious agreement that can be ratified by all countries. Still, progress has been slowed as negotiators wait for the new and more climate-friendly government of President-elect Barack Obama. I know it's taken a long time somehow. In the meantime, 70 million tons of global warming pollutants are being spilled into the thin shelf atmosphere surrounding the planet Earth every 24 hours. That's a lot. And it does add up over time. And yes, it will change the climate or the global weather in ways, like I said, that nobody really knows or understands. U.S. Senator John Kerry, who is in line for chairmanship of the powerful Foreign Relations Committee, said a new draft treaty should be possible even if the U.S. does not impose mandatory limits on greenhouse gases before the next climate conference. Well, all these are connected to what's going on in the whole world over. And once again, it's connected to the worldwide economic crisis. And yes, that will have effect on negotiations or climate change treaties. Yes, it will, because the worse the world's economies get, then the less money they're really going to have to spend on climate change or fixing or doing something about global warming. And it's going to take a lot of money, a lot of energy, a lot of resources to change something like that. And again, they don't really understand global warming, climate change exactly, but it could tip the world's climate into a new ice age or something on that order. Anyway, all these are more signs of the end times, transition days. And yes, there are many, many signs.